Let me describe a scene that happens in boardrooms every quarter. The risk manager puts up a heat map. It's a colorful grid, reds, yellows, greens. The board nods politely. Nobody asks a question. Nothing changes. The meeting moves on. That heat map just failed. And here's the thing. It's not because heat maps are useless. It's because most heat maps are built wrong. They're built to display data, not to tell a story. And if your heat map doesn't make someone in the room uncomfortable enough to act, it's not doing its job. The risk heat map is probably the single most common risk visualization in the world, and also the most commonly wasted. Everyone has one, almost nobody builds one that actually drives decisions. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you how to build a heat map that doesn't just sit in a slide deck, it changes behavior. Step by step with a real example. Step 1. Get your scales right before you plot anything. The most important decision is your likelihood and impact scales, and most organizations get them wrong. A 5x5 matrix is the most practical. 3x3 is too blunt for nuance, while 10x10 creates a false sense of precision that you likely can't support with data. Give concrete scale anchors. Don't just say high likelihood, define it. For example, if you see notation 1 represents rare, happens in exception circumstances, meaning once in 10 plus years with no precedent. 2 is unlikely, and you are not expecting this to happen, and if happens, it may once in 5 to 10 years. 3 is possible, every 1 to 5 years. 4 is likely, once a year. And 5 is almost certain, meaning it's happening now or multiple times a year. Do the same for impact. Define each level in financial terms, operational terms, and reputational terms relevant to your specific organization. If your scales aren't anchored to something concrete, every risk owner will interpret them differently, and your heat map becomes meaningless. Step 2. Plot residual risk, not just inherent risk. You need to understand the critical choice: inherent risk before controls versus residual risk after controls. Best practice is to plot residual risk as the primary view, because that's what the business is actually living with on a day-to-day basis. Optionally show inherent risk as a secondary overlay to demonstrate control value. It shows leadership exactly where their security investments are going. If you only show inherent risk, everything looks terrifying and leadership tunes out because they don't see a path to improvement. On the flip side, if you only show residual, you can't justify your control investments. Why are we spending millions if the risk looks low? The most effective heat maps show movement from inherent to residual, so leadership can see that controls are actually working and worth the cost. Step 3. Use color thresholds tied to risk appetite. Don't use arbitrary coloring. Tie your red, amber, and green zones directly to your board-approved risk appetite statement. For example, if the board's risk appetite says, "We will not accept any risk with a residual score above 15, then every risk above 15 must be red. 10 to 15 is amber, and below 10 is green. This is what makes a heat map actionable. Red isn't just bad, it means outside our stated tolerance and requires immediate management action. When colors are tied to appetite, you aren't just presenting data, you're presenting compliance with the board's own strategy. Step 4. Add movement arrows and trend indicators. Static heat maps are just snapshots in time, but leadership wants to see the direction of travel. Add arrows showing whether each risk is trending up, down, or stable since the last quarter. This provides the context of whether our current mitigation strategies are working. Highlight any risk that has moved into a new color zone. For instance, this risk moved from amber to red this quarter because of a change in market conditions. This is where the story lives. A heat map with movement arrows forces a conversation. Why did this risk get worse? What are we doing about it right now? Step 5. Curate. Don't show everything. A heat map with 50 risks plotted on it communicates nothing but noise. It's overwhelming and ineffective. Best practice is to show the top 10 to 15 enterprise risks on the board heat map. You can group or aggregate lower-level risks into broader categories. Your operational risk register might have 200 items. Your board heat map should have 12 to 15. The discipline is in the curation, not the completeness. Let's look at an example. An operations department at a mid-size financial services company. We will plot 12 risks on a 5x5 matrix. Show one risk specifically: third-party technology dependency. Scored likelihood 4, impact 5, sitting deep in the red zone with an upward trend arrow. This risk moved from amber to red recently. The reason? Increased visibility of systemic vendor fragility, similar to the CrowdStrike event. Show how this single data point on the heat map triggers a board conversation about vendor concentration and strategic resilience. To recap, here are the 3 biggest mistakes you need to avoid when building your heat map. 1. Using vague, unanchored scales. If high means something different to every risk owner, the map is junk. 2. Plotting too many risks. If the board sees 40 dots, they see nothing. 3. Showing the heat map without commentary. A heat map without a narrative is just a picture. Always present it with, here's what changed, here's why, and here's what we're doing. Thank you for watching. Visit www.grctimes.com for best practices and free templates. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more practical risk management insights.